Bozeman God sits on Mount Carmel Farm in the northern Cape of South Africa, in the middle of the Kalahari. You wouldn't know it was there. In a mostly barren landscape, you see an area dense in trees. Approaching, you notice a large sinkhole and what looks like a small pool at the bottom. Something you notice when you enter the water. From the surface, it looks brackish. Once inside, it becomes crystal clear. This is a metaphor for the subconscious. Sometimes it looks and feels like a chaotic mess on the surface, but once you descend, once you get accustomed to doing shadow work, once you learn the patterns of the psyche, everything begins to get a lot more clear. You begin to be able to tell the difference between what is conditional programming and what is truly you. It descends to approximately 283 meters, nearly 930 feet straight down. The hole began to have a reputation, which began to pull in more visitors. Hi, and welcome back to Hidden Tetrahedron, on our journey into the darkest parts of the human psyche. Today we're looking at a story of three men whose experience inside one of the deepest freshwater caves on Earth maps almost exactly onto what happens when we attempt to retrieve something buried deep in the subconscious. The physics, the biology, the sequence of events, they demonstrate literally and precisely how shadow work operates and what it costs. Dion Dreyer grew up in Behenning, almost 35 miles south of Johannesburg, and loved adventure in all its forms. He shot his first buck at age 10. By age 17, he was racing a souped-up car around local tracks and tinkering with his motorcycle. Driving was just another expression of the same thing. The need to go further, to find the edge and lean into it. He began diving at 17. By 20, he had clocked about 200 dives. He planned meticulously. Before every dive, he prayed. 2 weeks before the expedition, his grandfather passed away. Sitting around the fire with his father Theo, Dion said, "If I had a choice of how to go out in my life, I'd like to go out diving." His mother begged him not to go. The hole already had a body count, and Dion went anyway. What's worth examining is how Marie must have felt. Two individuals who were once one. When you have such a deep somatic connection to another person, your subconscious knows when there is danger in the way. We often want to protect the people we love from suffering. We see the risk, we feel the danger, and the instinct is to pull them back. But everyone has their own descent. And the people who are pulled back from it don't avoid the suffering. They just carry it differently, on the surface, unresolved. Marie couldn't have stopped what was already in motion. Dion's direction was set long before December 1994. This cave was where he was always going. And this is one of the hardest things shadow work asks of the people around us, to hold the space without collapsing it, to let someone get into what they need to get into, even when every instinct says otherwise. On December 17, 1994, on a reconnaissance dive at 60 meters on the way back up, Dion gave the three-finger signal to his buddy. Everything was okay. He was ascending. He was almost out. Then a light appeared below them. A diver count came up one short. Another diver dragged his finger across his throat. Dion had probably lost consciousness from oxygen toxicity or hypercapnia, CO2 buildup from the high work rate of breathing at depth. Sit with that for a moment. The most important element to keep him alive built up into his system until it was too much. This is like expanding too much and facing a collapse because you do not have the capacity to carry what your extended reality requires. One breath too labored. The body simply shut off the light, the same way the subconscious does. Dion sank to the cave floor at 270 meters. His father enlisted De Beers Mining Company, which deployed a submersible. It found Dreyer's dive helmet, but no other signs of Dion. Symbolically, what is a submersible? It's a tool that can be used at high depths to explore, but a tool is useless without the user. The tools are limited. It returned the dive helmet, the thing meant to keep the diver safe, but could not complete the job of finding the diver. A tool is only as useful as the consciousness operating it, and some things cannot be retrieved by instrument alone. Some retrievals require a specific observer, someone energetically aligned with what they're looking for, or the data simply doesn't surface. His dad, Theo, later said he had the most majestic grave in the country. This will be his final resting place. And there Dion stayed for 10 years. Dave Shaw grew up in Katanning, Western Australia. At 18, he was already crop dusting from a cockpit. That same year, he took a Melbourne woman named Anne up in his airplane on their first date. They married less than 2 years later. It wasn't until 1999, at age 45, that Shaw took up scuba. 5 years. That's all he had. And in those 5 years, he became one of the most technically sophisticated cave divers on the planet, custom modifying his rebreather, replacing analog electronics with digital ones to handle extreme pressures. He flew for Cathay Pacific. He was a devout Christian, a husband, and a father of 2. The numbers here tell a story. 1999 carries the energy of 999, the mastery number of completion, the close of one cycle before the next begins. It's the ending of the final cell evolution and the cell mitosis. 9 is the new 1. 45 is structural returning to the heart, which is the core of shadow work. And 5 years, again, 5 being the heart. So in 1999, Shaw was at a completion stage energetically, ready to begin his next chapter by bringing his current structure into his heart. He was aligned with his purpose, and it only took 5 years for him to master it. On October 28, 2004, Shaw descended alone into Bozeman Ghat, breaking 4 world records simultaneously. At the bottom, he swept his light left and right, the first human ever to lay a line at that depth. Suddenly, he stopped. About 50 feet to his left, perfectly illuminated in gin clear water, was a human body. Think about how clear this water is. But you have to be the observer meant to observe the parts of the psyche that are hidden in order to see them. You were not meant to see it all. The submersible was not capable of seeing Dion because it was Shaw's purpose to observe him and return him to the surface. Where in your life do you think that you have these blind spots? Bits of the psyche that you are not energetically ready to process, but that will reemerge later when you are equipped to handle them. I am curious if you have experienced this or are experiencing it now. Let me know in the comments. The body was on its back, arms reaching toward the surface, still wearing its fins, 10 years underwater, and Dion Dreyer was still perfectly, eerily intact. Shaw wrote in his dive report, "As I swept left with my light, I saw a body as plain as day. He was lying on his back, arms in the air and legs outstretched. After 12 hours of decompression, he surfaced. Confirmed it was Dion, called Theo Dreyer, and made a promise to bring his son home. That promise would later cost Dave Shaw everything." And at one point, I think Dion even said that he felt led or compelled to bring him home. And so rather you think it is divine intervention or God or a purpose or, whatever, however it fits into your belief, you have to really ask what potentially is happening. How are people so connected to something they don't know anything about? And of course, I believe we're all connected and existing in a mitosis. But I'm really interested in what you think. But Shaw moved his torch, the light itself, consciousness in its most direct form, to his left shoulder. The left side carries the energy of the feminine. It's the part of us that's receptive, burden-bearing, the integration of what is received. He entered a configuration he had never used before, at a depth no human had operated at, in a situation with no margin for error. That small shift in how he was carrying his light would contribute directly to what happened next. The witnessing is the first act of retrieval. The release begins at the moment of genuine contact, not at the moment of physical extraction. It took 11.5 minutes just to reach the bottom. And then, all at once, everything went wrong. Shaw had been told the body would remain negatively buoyant. The visible parts appeared skeletal, but inside Dion's dry suit, the corpse had transformed into adipocere, a soap-like wax formed by cold water and low oxygen. And adipocere floats. Nobody had accounted for this. The body began to rise. Adipocere forms in cold, still, oxygen-deprived environments. Those are exactly the conditions we create internally when we bury something without integrating it. We stop bringing warmth to it. We seal off the airflow. We keep still and cold and contained. And in those conditions, it doesn't decompose. It preserves. It waits. And when you finally reach down to handle it, it does not behave like something dead and finished. It is buoyant. It moves. It behaves in ways you didn't prepare for because you assumed resolution had happened when it hadn't. Shaw set his light down to work with both hands. He temporarily removed his torch, his direct consciousness, his light, so that he could manage the physical task with both hands. This is a pattern that comes up constantly in shadow work. We set down the conscious observer so we can work through the material subconsciously, but the matter has to be consciously held throughout the entire process. The moment you set down the light, the entanglement becomes invisible. You cannot work through what you cannot see. The repositioned torch wire became entangled in the body bag lines. He tried to abort, but he became entangled in the guideline on the way up. On the tape, you can hear Dave breathing. Harder and harder and harder. Then there's silence. He stopped breathing approximately 27 minutes into his dive. The CO2 had built faster than his body could purge it. The exertion, the entanglement, the panic, each one feeding the next. He blacked out. He drowned at 270 meters in the dark beside the man he had come to bring home. The blackout was not only a physical event, it was the observer going offline. When distortion builds past a certain threshold, when the system moving far enough from neutral, far enough from source, the observer can no longer maintain its position. It sometimes recedes, and then sometimes it can do a flip in order to restore equilibrium. At moderate distortion, we lose perspective. At deeper distortion, you can lose the capacity to self-regulate. At the furthest point, the observer collapses entirely. The system continues running with no one watching it. No feedback, no correction, no interruption of the loop. This is the neurobiological mechanism of psychosis, and it is the mechanism of Shaw's death. The harder he worked, the more CO2 built, the further he moved from neutral. The further from neutral, the less the observer could hold its ground. And once the observer went offline, nothing remained to interpret the spiral. The lesson is not to avoid the depth. The lesson is that thrashing at depth accelerates the distance from neutral and pushes the observer offline faster. Stillness is what keeps the light on. I want to take a moment to honor what Dave Shaw attempted. The coordination, the commitment, the cost for a man he never knew to fulfill a promise to his father he had just met. Whatever the outcome, that attempt matters. Exertion, entanglement, and panic. In shadow work, this looks like mental fatigue, enmeshment, and subconscious reaction. When you are in the loop, you feel out of control. You feel you cannot integrate what you're holding because the system doesn't have the capacity, because it's still running the old loop it was trying to replace. This is where most people stop. The friction feels unbearable, and the subconscious is doing exactly what it is built to do: defend the reality it believes is true. It does not willingly agree to be updated. When you encounter this, and you will, pause. Don't try to stay at depth longer than you can handle. Ask yourself honestly, can I hold these changes right now? Or do I need to decompress, resurface, meditate on this, and return better adapted? There is no failure in the second answer. Shaw tried to abort. The abort was correct. What followed wasn't a failure of courage, it was a failure of conditions. Don Shirley, waiting at 220 meters, realized Shaw was not coming. He had to make the hard choice to leave Dave. He survived his ascent, but suffered a catastrophic vestibular hit, permanent inner ear damage that destroyed his sense of balance. He had to relearn how to walk. Don Shirley's injury is not only the wound of the witness, it is the universal result of going deep enough of any genuine shadow work taken to real depth. Nobody returns from a real excavation with their old orientation intact. The compass you carried down was calibrated for a version of yourself that no longer exists after what you found. What felt like north before may not feel like north anymore. Relationships reorganize, values shift, things that felt stable become uncertain. This is not malfunction. This is the accurate response of a system that has been fundamentally changed by what it encountered. The danger is not the disorientation. The danger is surfacing without the integration tools to build the new orientation, coming up and drifting, untethered from the old compass, and without the means to calibrate the new one. If you surface and simply lose yourself in the confusion, the dive happened, but the return never completed. The tools you retrieved at depth, the patterns recognized, the things finally named, the understanding brought back, those were the new instruments. You use them to relearn how to walk. Literally, in Don Shirley's case, step by step against the vestibular system giving wrong information, in a body that no longer trusted its own signals. That is shadow integration in its most physical form, and it belongs to anyone who has gone deep enough to come back changed. 4 days later, the support team descended to retrieve equipment. Shaw's dry suit had inflated. The entangled line slowly pulled both men upward. They were found floating together at 20 meters. Shaw against the roof of the cave, Dryer suspended below him, still connected by the lines that had taken them both. Dion had been stuck at the bottom for 10 years. Shaw found him, and the body became unstuck. Shaw died trying to retrieve him, and 4 days later, both of them surfaced. Not because anyone forced it, but because the conditions for release had finally been met. The material that is ready to integrate does not need to be dragged to the surface. When the threshold is crossed, it rises. Our shadow is not the enemy. It is the potential of our consciousness. Data that needs to be processed and integrated so we can use the knowledge to build a structure for the next level. The line that connects that, the friction that is created, can feel like it kills us, mentally, physically, emotionally. But when we change our perspective to knowing that the friction is data grounding potential, we stop becoming victims. We stop being victims of the circumstance and start asking, What is this friction teaching me? How can I master this energy and use it to reach my potential? Where in your life do you feel victimized by the circumstances right now, and how can you flip the script? He died a noble death, Don Shirley said, if there is such a thing. The cave doesn't care how prepared you are. You will encounter conditions that you didn't plan for. The material will not be in the form you expected. It will move when you touch it. This is not a reason not to go. It is the reason you go prepared. Here are 5 parts that are drawn directly from what this story demonstrates. 1. Know your gas mix before you descend. Before any genuine shadow work, therapy, plant medicine, a hard confrontation with a pattern, a serious meditation practice, assess your current capacity honestly. What is your emotional regulation baseline right now? What are the elements in your current composition that cloud judgment when they build too fast? Who knows you're going in and is positioned to meet you on the way back? You cannot calculate your gas mix at depth. You do it on the surface before you enter the water. 2. Have a specific intention. Entering the unconscious without a defined objective is not shadow work. It's rumination. Name the specific thing you're going down to retrieve. Something like, I want to understand why I consistently shut down in conflict and trace that pattern to its origin. Specific, bounded, retrievable. The more precise the intention, the less time you spend at depth and the less CO2 builds. 3. Respect the pressure of each level and return to neutral. Rushing integration is how you get the bends. A breakthrough on Tuesday and a destabilization on Thursday because you moved the depth straight back to the surface without stopping. Every layer needs time to restore equilibrium. And between descents, the loop has to close completely. Return to neutral. Let the previous experience finish its full motion before you open the next one. The dive took 5 minutes. The return took 12 hours. That ratio is the system, not a limitation of it. 4. Keep the light on. Don't sit down the conscious observer to work with both hands. The material has to be consciously held and witnessed throughout. The moment the observer goes offline, the entanglement becomes invisible, and the spiral has no mechanism to interpretate it. Shadow work is not subconscious processing alone. It is conscious observation of subconscious material. The light needs to stay on. 5. You cannot do this alone, and sometimes the tools don't exist yet. Some retrievals can only be done by one person. But Don Shirley was at 220 meters and 7 support divers were distributed through every level of the water column. You need someone who knows where you're going and is qualified to come get you if necessary. You need support at every level of the return, and sometimes you will reach a depth that your current tools cannot safely access. That is not a failure. That is information. Build a better technology, find the third way, the approach that doesn't require absorbing the full pressure of the retrieval alone. The retrieval doesn't have to cost everything every single time. So find a trusted friend, a therapist, someone who can help you in your journey. Collectively, we live in a culture that treats depth as pathology and hands out relief before the experience has been allowed to complete its motion. We mistake the slit cloud for the problem, when the slit cloud is proof that contact was made. We send people back to the surface before the decompression is finished and then wonder why the same patterns keep repeating. We need better containers, support at every level of the column, not just crisis intervention at the surface, not just initiation at the bottom, but actual infrastructure for the 12-hour return. We need to hold space for the people who came back without their compass and are quietly relearning to ground beneath them. And we need to stop treating unintegrated material as weakness. It isn't weakness, it's data that hasn't been given the condition to surface yet. Don't let the loop stay open forever, just because going down is hard. The cave is patient. What's at the bottom is not going anywhere. And now you have a more honest map of what it actually takes to go and get it. That's where I want to leave it today. A few questions to sit with. Is there a loop in your life that's been open longer than you've admitted to yourself? Is there something you've sealed off and made peace with, when the more honest truth is that you haven't yet had the tools or the team to go and retrieve it? Is there someone in your life whose descent you've been trying to prevent? And is it possible that holding the surface for them is more useful than blocking the entrance? And think about this with your children as well. Who is your Don Shirley? Who knows you're going down and is positioned to meet you on the way back? You don't have to answer this out loud, but I'd love it if you did. You can send me a DM, you can leave a comment if you have any questions, have any topics that you want covered. I'm completely open to suggestions and topics. Until next time, decompress slowly, give yourself the 12 hours, and don't dive alone.